You are 19 years old. You're from a small town in Virginia. You've never even seen the ocean before you joined the army. And now, here you are, standing in a flat-bottomed boat made of plywood and steel, bobbing up and down in the rough grey waters of the English Channel. The smell is unbearable. It's a mix of diesel fumes, salt water, and vomit. Every man around you is sick. The waves are 6 feet high, crashing over the sides. You are soaked to the bone, shivering uncontrollably. But it isn't just the cold, it's the sound. Ahead of you, the horizon is exploding. The sky is filled with the thunder of naval guns, firing from battleships behind you. The shells scream over your head like freight trains. They told you this bombardment will smash the German defenses. They told you that when you land, there will be nothing left but craters. You check your rifle. You check the plastic bag wrapped around it to keep it dry. You touch the letter in your pocket, the one you wrote to your mother last night, just in case. The coxswain, the man steering the boat, yells, 30 seconds! The engine roars, the boat lurches forward. Through the mist, you see it. The beach. It doesn't look like a military target. It looks like a slaughterhouse. The ramp drops. In that precise second, the world ends. Today, on verified WWII stories, we are not looking at the maps of generals. We're going down to the water level. We are joining the men of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions in the first wave at Omaha Beach. This is the verified account of the deadliest 30 minutes in American military history. This is what it actually felt like to walk into hell. The moment the ramp dropped on a Higgins boat in the first wave, the myth of an easy landing vanished. The naval bombardment had failed. The German bunkers were not destroyed. They were waiting. As the metal door slammed down into the water, German MG-42 machine guns opened fire instantly. An MG-42 fires 1,200 rounds per minute. That is 20 bullets every single second. From the cliffs above, they created a wall of lead across the open ramp. In many boats, the first row of men didn't even take a step. They were cut down where they stood. Their bodies blocked the exit for the men behind them. For those who jumped over the sides, the nightmare just changed. They didn't land on sand. They landed in deep water. Many boats had stopped too far out on sandbars. Men jumped into 6 feet of water carrying 80 pounds of gear. Imagine jumping into a swimming pool wearing a winter coat, combat boots, a helmet, ammunition belts, grenades, and a radio. You sink like a stone. Dozens of men drowned without ever being shot. They struggled in the dark water, clawing at the surface, pulled down by the weight of their own protection. Survivors later recalled seeing men on the bottom of the sea, walking slowly, trying to shed their packs, before running out of air. If you made it to the surface, you had to cross 200 yards of open water to get to the dry sand. 200 yards. That's the length of 2 football fields, and every inch of it was zeroed in by German mortars. The water around you isn't grey anymore. It's red. This is not a metaphor. The blood from the first wave was so thick that the tide turned crimson. You are wading through the surf, hiding behind metal obstacles the Germans planted to stop tanks. You hear the zip-zip sound of bullets hitting the water next to your ear. You see your friends, boys you grew up with, disappearing under the waves. You finally reach the sand, but there is no cover. It's low tide. You have to run across a wide, flat beach with absolutely nowhere to hide. The sand is erupting around you as mortar shells land. The concussion knocks the wind out of you. Shrapnel flies like angry hornets. Your only goal, your only hope of survival, is to reach the Shingle. The Shingle was a bank of stones and rocks at the top of the beach. It was just a small ridge, maybe a few feet high, but it was the only thing between you and the machine guns. By 6:45 a.m., just 15 minutes after H-hour, the first wave was effectively destroyed. The units were shattered, officers were dead, radios were broken. The men who made it to the Shingle were huddled together, paralyzed by shock. They were lying flat, pressing their faces into the wet stones. The noise was deafening. You couldn't hear orders, you couldn't think. You just watched men die. A medic, a 19-year-old boy labeled a conscientious objector because he refused to carry a gun, is crawling across the sand. He's dragging a wounded man. A bullet hits the medic. He falls. He gets up again. He keeps crawling. He ties a tourniquet, he moves to the next man. He does this until he can't move anymore. At the Shingle, chaos reigns. Soldiers from different companies are mixed up. Nobody knows where they are. The plan is gone. The tanks that were supposed to support them, most of them sank in the ocean. The engineers who were supposed to blow up the obstacles, most of them were killed before they could set the fuses. For an hour, it looked like the invasion had failed. The German commanders in the bunkers were radioing their headquarters, reporting that the landing had been stopped. They said the Americans were dying on the water's edge. And they were right. But they underestimated one thing: the human spirit. There is a moment in every battle where soldiers realize that staying where they are means death. If they stay on the beach, they die. If they retreat into the water, they die. The only way to live is to stand up and run directly at the guns that are killing them. It didn't happen because of a grand strategy. It happened because of individuals. Brigadier General Norman Cota, arguably the bravest man on the beach that day, was walking upright among the terrified men. He had a cigar in his mouth. Bullets were snapping around him. He looked down at a group of soldiers hiding behind the rocks and said the famous words, "Gentlemen, we are being killed on the beaches. Let us go inland and be killed." It wasn't a request, it was a statement of fact. Slowly, small groups of men began to move. A sergeant here, a private there. They didn't charge in a massive wave like in the movies. They moved in groups of 3 or 4. One man would fire his rifle at the bunker, while 2 others ran forward 10 yards and dove for cover. Then, they would switch. They used Bangalore torpedoes, long metal tubes filled with explosives, to blow holes in the barbed wire. Imagine the courage it takes to be the first man to stand up. You know the machine gunner is watching. You know you are the target. But you stand up anyway. They fought their way up the bluffs. They threw grenades into the pillboxes. They engaged the German defenders in brutal close-quarters combat in the trenches. By noon, the German fire began to slow down. The bunkers were falling one by one. The Americans had broken through. When the second and third waves landed, they saw a scene of absolute devastation. The beach was littered with burning tanks, wrecked landing craft, and thousands of bodies. But the guns on the cliffs were silent. The verified story of Omaha Beach is not about a perfect military operation. It was a disaster. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. The intelligence was bad. The weather was bad. The support failed. But it was won by the 19-year-old boys from towns like Bedford, Virginia. The Bedford Boys, Company A of the 116th Infantry, were in that first wave. They sent 34 men. Within the first 10 minutes, 19 of them were dead. By the end of the day, 23 were gone. A single small town lost a generation of young men in one morning. Why do we tell this story? Why do we need to remember the specific feeling of the cold water and the smell of the diesel? Because if we only look at the arrows on the map, we forget the cost. We forget that freedom wasn't free. It was paid for, yard by yard, on a stretch of wet sand in France. Next time you see a movie about D-Day, remember the reality. Remember the weight of the gear. Remember the chaos. And remember the men who stood up when everything told them to stay down. The battle for Omaha Beach was the bloodiest day for the US Army in the European theater. But by nightfall, they held the beach. The door to Europe was open. The end of the Third Reich had begun. What would you have done if you were huddled behind that shingle, watching the machine gun bullets chew up the rocks inches from your face? Would you have found the courage to stand up? It's a question none of us can answer unless we are there. Thank you for watching verified WWII stories. If you want to know about the strange, ghost-like tanks the Allies used to fool the Germans later in the war, click on the video appearing on your screen now. It's a story you won't believe.